So continuing on from the Matootie Talks chat by the little kids, we are here to give our insights into why it's okay to cry. So for me, the first initial thing that I wanted to react to that video is that it's okay to cry. And the reasoning for that is like, if I look into like the research a little bit, is that it's actually releasing of tears. And it's only through time and through different generations that there's now like a negative connotation of crying to be a negative thing. So
and it's like seen as weak, right? Like when we're sad, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be sad because it's being portrayed as you're weak, you don't know how to deal with things.
That's correct.
And I think for us, it's challenging our fears behind releasing negative emotions. Like, where did we learn that it's not okay to cry? And how can we unlearn that by realizing, wait a minute, we're human, we're allowed to feel, it's natural, right? It's a natural response for our body to release tears.
Yeah. So if you look at even like if you Google it, it's like crying is actually the meaning of crying is calling out, like, asking for help. And really that's what it is, isn't it? It's like you want to be heard, wanting to be acknowledged for whatever you're feeling inside. And I might just touch on like, from a perspective of a child versus a perspective of an adult, like when we're growing up, like the frontal part of our brain doesn't actually fully develop until later on into our adulthood. And that frontal part of our brain is what kind of gives us logic. And so kids who are young haven't developed that yet,
but they haven't made sense of feelings, like they just automatically release them.
That's correct. And as adults, what we kind of do in that logical part is like we pose a risk or an assumption of like a particular situation. So if a child like falls over and our reaction is like, stop crying, it's because we know that the risk there is minimal. But for that particular child, like especially if they're in their formative years, which is 0 to 8 years old, they don't know that. Like, what they're asking for is really validation, or really for us to say, yes, I see you, I hear you, and you're in pain, or you're emotionally attached to a ball that that popped or something. But as adults, we've kind of been like, what's the big deal?
Experience more, like we have more life experience. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we, a call to adults is really to bring ourselves down to, to the understanding of, or the capacity of that child, or understanding that what they're actually asking from us is for us to acknowledge what they're feeling.
And then I feel like sometimes, like, for example, you said that it makes sense for an adult to say to a child, why are you crying? Instead of asking why, it's like more so coming from a point of empathy, like what actually happened? What are you feeling inside? So allows the child to explore their, like, what makes me upset? And, this makes me upset in future. Can you do this? Or, it's for them to kind of make sense and understand. Whereas like when we're a little bit older, it's like we know what makes us upset, right? We know what makes us sad. And I think that's what we get to do as adults for the children, is be able to make sense of it. And sometimes as adults, like, we forget to reflect a lot of the time. We just, like you said, react on like emotionally
it's not just like actually reacting to it. It also has something to do with our own experiences of us as children, or us in the formative years experiencing that. So in our heads, we kind of like, is it a positive thing that we experience, or is it a negative thing? When I was young, did I experience kind of comfort or acknowledgement during those times when I would cry out, or was I reprimanded for and told to stop? You're crying for no reason. And so those kind of experiences, we bring that into adulthood. And what's funny is that we actually if we're not aware of it, that's what we put on to our children or to people, like to others other than ourselves. Like we say, what's the big deal? Or to even adults, perhaps if they're reaching out to us. Our own experiences when, around crying, actually impacts how we react to other people, crying out for us for attention. So if we think about it, like, it's that, was I comforted or was I like dismissed, when I went through that experience? And we bring that into adulthood. And I think that's the call to action for adults, is like when we know better, we do better, because then we know how to react to those, not react to those situations, actually respond in those situations where we are present, and we are giving that time needed for us to be able to acknowledge, show love, show understanding, and really show kindness and compassion for whoever's going through that, whether it's a child or adult, or and some a peer. That's the kind of things that we need to think about when we want to respond in a compassionate way.
And you did mention a little bit earlier about the developmental process, so generally when we're young, we're full sponges, we're learning. When we're a little bit older, it's like, okay, we're exposed to new learning, or we're being challenged with what we've learned. And adulthood is pretty much, it's kind of like, okay, I know what I've learned, I'm still learning, but there's a period where you're unlearning like those, negative kind of beliefs that we've created from however we kind of like the responses we received when we expressed emotion. So like you mentioned, awareness, right? So it's so important to reflect. And that's why you ask what happened. So it allows us to take that moment, even as kids, to make sense of it all, and a lot of the times we don't make sense of it. We just say, okay, I'm bad, next, blah. And then we don't realize the impacts of it. And then we start thinking, oh my God, this sadness, like it controls me. I'm always sad, and that's when it starts to not be okay, when you're stuck in that feeling and emotion for too long. So what generally happens is, for example, an event happens, a thought happens, whatever that thought may be, and then a feeling happens, and then it's resulted into a behavior or action. So for example, in the event that I popped my ball when I was a child, the thought might be, I can't take care of things, I'm not a good child. And then the feeling might be, I feel sad, I feel angry. And then the action might be, I'm going to have a tantrum, I'm going to release blah. So it's kind of like we have to learn how to deal with the emotions in a positive way. Not that feeling emotion is bad, not that thinking is bad, because thinking and feeling, they're quite natural. It's normal. But being able to manage it and control those so that we can result in positive behaviors. Because if we're not taught how to cope, it will turn into really bad coping mechanisms, for a child or an adult, whatever it might look like. So the goal is to make sense of it, feel it, express it, but in positive ways.
Yeah, so that's really touching on emotional regulation, right? If you're the person that's experiencing it, if you are not the person that's experiencing it, it's up to you to kind of, because adults kind of like their attention span is also short. For we think of the next thing that we're doing or what we have to do. So most of the time, and maybe this is a generalization, we're not actually in the present. And that what happens there is that if we're in a situation where someone is in need or someone's actually asking for our help, we kind of put upon them like a time frame of like my capacity to deal with whatever you're going with, what that person is going through. We're not, we need to kind of keep in mind that it's not about us. That person that's going through it, they go through that journey in their own time. When we're the one that's saying, okay, that's enough crying now, or okay, you've talked about that for too long now, we're actually missing the massive component, which is required in this healing and in this recognition journey.
Right. And
Right.
I think at times, like as adults, we forget that we're human, and sometimes we do want to be at service and save people, but our jobs is purely just to be supportive and guide and provide
Yeah.
wisdom. The moment
Yeah.
you start telling people what to do, and like in terms of controlling or expectation, that person won't feel like that's a safe space for me to open up to.
Yeah.
I guess like our automatic response to those who are sad or troubled in our close circle of friends, it can be a detriment for people because they become somewhat reliant on us to give us that
Yeah.
validation. But at the end of the day, we should encourage others to explore and, make sense of their feelings so that they're strengthened. They're able to overcome what they're facing and regulating. Whereas
Yeah.
like it's really okay for them to open up to us support them in whatever way that might mean, but
Yeah.
it's not to be able to solve their problems.
That's correct. And sometimes we kind of borderline the toxic positivity. Like, that's all right, it'll be better for you. Like, just think about all the good things that's happening in your life now. And when sometimes what the person needs is just acknowledgement of that particular experience to kind of go, this is what I'm experiencing right now. This is how I'm feeling. And acknowledging that. They don't need to hear from you that, that, oh, tomorrow's going to be better. Tomorrow you will get your bowl, because, they are going through this process and you are a part of it, but you're not feeling what they're feeling. And what they're really asking for is to be seen, to be heard, and for us to give permission to not let them to cry, but permission for them to feel what they're actually feeling.
Yeah. Another thing is that, like as parents, I'm not a parent yet, but, like from experience from seeing my parents, they want to show that they're strong and invincible, and show them like, but what really should have been done is like, show them what is real. Like, hey, it's okay to be sad when you're an adult. It's okay to experience challenges. We sometimes don't know what we're doing, being able to express those thoughts and feelings encourages your kids or even the people around you to also be understanding and creating a space and like just showing like human, like it's real, the realness.
Yes.
Because as a kid, right, you think, oh, my parents, they can deal with whatever, they can manage whatever. And then the moment I'm facing troubles, I'm like, my parents never had problems, because I did that. And it was foreign, it was weird, like, so I think, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that in terms of, our upbringing, where we see our parents actually trying to protect us, but by not sharing or certain vulnerabilities that they went through. So as adults, we feel ill-equipped because we haven't seen an example of, our parents going through a crisis and overcoming it or breaking through it because they tried to protect us from that.
For sure. And it was somewhat uncomfortable as well. Like how do we talk about this? It's embarrassing or it makes us feel shameful. Like there's a lot of negative feelings to the beliefs around, being honest and real. And it also adds on to like expectations, like their expectation as a parent or our expectations as adults. I think there's a lot of factors that play into it.
Yeah, and I think it's that, like, it's putting shame into in a season that you might be going through, and not vocalizing it or not sharing it actually makes us feel like we're alone in experiencing something that they have gone through or something similar.
Yeah. And so that's the beauty of like being open and being vulnerable, because it allows people to realize, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. You know what? This is safe. I can now share what I'm struggling with. And I think a lot of the time, what we also struggle with is how to respond. Because some of us, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And then we use that to kind of like, oh, I need to not be here because this is weird. Like, I don't, so things that potentially say are things just like, I'm here for you, this is hard, like, you know, I don't know what to say, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for
Yeah.
you. You know, I just want to know that I love you and I care about you, or
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm listening. You know, those are the
And
things you need to say.
yeah. And actually, for the person that's going through it, the expectation on the other person, like that they're sharing it with, is not for them to solve it for them. It's
Yeah,
they need to be that listening ear or just that sounding board. And that actually makes them realize that, hey, I'm not going through this alone. There's someone I can count on, and that would give them confidence in actually going through this, because someone is there just listening. It's not up to us to kind of problem solve for them. What they're asking for us is to just be there.
exactly. And I think that's what our kids want as well. You know, they want to have autonomy and like be able to make decisions. And when they're at that young period, that young stage, it's the parents' job to build up that, strengthen
Yeah.
them in that independent thought, so that next challenge they can be like, Mom, I can deal with it. I can
Yeah.
actually do that, but I can also be honest with my feelings, but let me figure
Yeah.
it out. You know, like not that
Yeah.
they're always relying on mom and dad. So that the
Yeah.
moment they're grown up, they're not freaking out, they're not like overwhelmed. They know how to deal, they know how to self-regulate, they know how to explore their feelings.
Yeah. And that's only, when they see, other people doing it, and then they kind of get through it. Okay. Like, so that's when they feel safe. That's when they feel like, they're validated and that they're heard and that they're seen. And, if we raise our kids in that particular way, we're actually empowering them to be well-equipped adults to know how to deal with situations. And how awesome is that to see a new generation of children who know how to deal with like feelings and who know how to connect, and it's so difficult to connect now, although we have all like the social media outlets in there, but connection is actually quite minimal because people are not sharing. And it's through our storytelling and it's through our experiences that connect us to people, because that makes us real, that makes us human, that makes us easier to speak to talk to, because that person has gone through something that you perhaps can relate to. And I wanted to touch on, like, for our parents, that's what they knew, that's how they knew to raise children, right? But we're a different generation. We're not here to kind of just survive, we're here to thrive. And the more we know, the more that we acknowledge is, that's our opportunity to break those cycles. And yeah, so every day is a new day. And if we want to change, then, we're hearing this information and we can kind of take the steps to do that. And our parents did their best. And I'm sure, like, as parents, we're also trying to do our best. But now we know better, we can kind of like start reaching for that opportunity where we can actually impact our children in a positive way.
Definitely. And I think a lot of that is from awareness. You know, you have to be aware of what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and questioning it. Like, where does this come from? You know, but not pointing the blame on other people, but accepting responsibility, taking
Yeah.
responsibility, and accountability as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the importance of being able to be real and be honest, because you can be real with yourself and be like, okay, I made a mistake. That's okay. I've learned, move on. You know, and I
Yep.
think that's what that whole learning,
Yeah.
unlearning, continuously learning is
That's
about.
right. And it's actually really empowering as a person, and as a parent, when you acknowledge where you don't actually do something that great. Like, I know I say to my kid, yeah, I did that and it wasn't nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try and do better next time. And for them, it opens up that conversation that when they do something, it's not the end of the world. It's not, there's no, that I won't be putting shame on whatever they've done, because there's forgiveness there, and also the opportunity to try and do better, right?
but people respect you more when you are real, when you
Yeah.
are so genuine. They will lean towards more with someone that they can resonate with and realize, oh
Yeah.
my God, I agree with you so much, instead of someone
Yeah.
that's 100% achieving, 100%
Yeah.
performing, because it's
Yeah.
somewhat realistic and it doesn't connect.
Yes. And then, like, and it's us to be aware of what we see out there versus what's actually real, because it's so much easier to show what, like, 100% doing, like, reaching, like, your peak of blah blah blah. And the more that we see that, the further away someone's actually reachable, like, the further away someone is, and we don't actually make that connection. But we're kind of going, well, like, unless that behind those scenes there's grit,
Yeah.
there's hard work, and there's actually an effort, or a purposeful way of people achieving that. Like, I would rather see those, the grit, the hard work, because that's what I can connect to, rather than what a facade of something that might be, like, in the clouds for me.
That's the big struggle with this generation. It's the generation of now. Things need to happen now. Things need to be sent now, delivered now, cooked now, everything now. Whereas enjoying the process and reflecting and growing and learning, that creates a more wholesome and more fulfilling life. Whereas if you do something so quickly and you're always just like next, it's not satisfying. Whereas if you worked hard for it, that you put your mind and your emotions, you were challenged, everything, it's so much more wholesome and fulfilling.
Definitely. And I think, with, like, the It's Okay to Cry, I think it's a call to be present and to know that you're valuable, like, that people are there for you to be heard and for you to be seen, and vice versa, where we should be, we should step up into those platforms where we're that person for someone, or for people that that may be in need, because what ideally, because we go through life like this, like, because, like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do the next thing. It's really asking us to be present in the moment, and not kind of pressure someone to go through an emotion like, hey, now your time's up because I need to wash the dishes and get the clothes off, or whatever it is, but actually being there, being present. Yes.
And we normalize these things to make people feel less alone, and it opens up conversation, it opens up moments for real connection. So yeah, I think watch the video again if you want to remind yourself that it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for listening, guys. Laura and I are here for you. We want to hear your thoughts. So comment or tag us any way you can. It's okay to cry.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Remember, it's okay to cry. Thanks for watching.